What's up everybody, how y'all doing? Today we're going to be talking about Aragami, which is the first debut dyxnt coming from the developers known as Lensworks that also published this game as well. Originally, Lensworks released a game known as Twin Souls: The Path of Shadows that, from looking at its gameplay, kinda serves as the precursor to the Aragami game that we got today. And as a matter of fact, Twin Souls was a title that gained momentum and backing via Kickstarter and was released on Microsoft Xbox One. But I take it that some time later, assets to the game was changed and enhanced along with the obvious change to character models, stages, and even the change of the name from Twin Souls: The Path of Shadows to just simply Aragami. And that name is actually the name of the main protagonist the player plays as in both iterations. What didn't change, however, were the fundamental mechanics that serves as the game's staple. Aragami was released on October 3rd, 2016, and in 2018 a DLC known as Nightfall was released as well, both of which came packaged together when I purchased the Shadow Edition for the PlayStation 4. And that would be the version that I'll be reviewing today, so let's get into it. This game looks nice with this Eastern culture scenery that's infused with its own animated sense of natural environments along with the inhabitants. Aragami's graphics along with this world can sometimes feel empty, almost on the PlayStation 2 level. The enemies here in this game don't have much of an individual personality when it comes to looks, but they do come in types that adds more of a variety to them. The player can always decipher which guys looks more important to the plot. For the most part, they stand out that much in comparison to the other familiar character models. Aragami himself looks like a deadly ninja within the light, and in the dark he kinda looks like an alternative costume to Noose I bought from the Mortal Kombat games. The level design varies from close and confined spaces to more open spaces, which give the player more freedom to approach situations in their own creative ways. From indoors to outdoors, the player will find that these levels are somewhat narrow, to put it metaphorically. I believe the purpose for this is to put a laser focus on not only the gameplay, but narrative. There are moments though that this game will look like it's glitching out, but that's just from our experience within the PlayStation 4 version. And this event only occurred on very few occasions. But let's talk about those kill animations. These are one of the highlights of the game. They look sexy and not to mention brutal. The cutscenes within Aragami look alright too, even though most would just have people standing around giving exposition. The standouts are the ones where people are actually fighting in it. And also, I do have to give Aragami its credit when it comes to this backstory sequences illustrated by these somewhat drawings. It may seem minimalistic, but it adds more of a sincerity to the storytelling. In Aragami, you play as somewhat of a specter, a being, or should I say a warrior, that's brought back from the dead to fulfill the request of a mysterious woman who goes by the name of Yamako. This lady serves as your companion and ultimately wants to be free while getting a little bit of a revenge on the side for those that did this to her. The people who stand in your way are members of this organization known as Kaio. Since Aragami's whole approach revolves around manipulating and utilizing shadows and places of darkness to complete your tasks, these guys are the perfect opposing force because they utilize weapons that revolve around bending light, illuminating areas, and pretty much things that would destroy the player in one hit. The unfortunate thing about all this is that Aragami pretty much has this one night to complete its whole entire task, because when daybreak hits, well, let's just say it isn't going to be too good for him. But the story of Aragami isn't too deep. However, discovering how Aragami and Yamako are intertwined was kind of interesting, but yeah, this game's strongest point lies within the gameplay. At its core, Aragami is a stealth game. The character the player controls is just what he looks like, a ninja, or to be more accurate, an assassin. And just like a good assassin, you're charged with eliminating the oppositions, preferably in a way that won't compromise your position, or the fact that you exist for that matter. You are to become a force of nature, if you will. At your disposal to complete your task is the ability to use, of course, your sword to take out your enemies, and various assortments of ways to be mobile. And while we're on the topic of movement, Aragami can walk, run, crouch, which in many cases can be useful to keep yourself concealed and decrease noise. Last but not least is your greatest asset of your character, which is your shadows. You have these shadow abilities that is not only the headline and gimmick for this title, but takes things to a whole nother level if utilized wisely. Shadows are your resource for completing your missions. The player can teleport Aragami to locations just as long as whatever destination that it reaches ends up in the shadows or a dark place. And this could be for whether your destination is on a surface that's vertical or horizontal to your approximate location. There'll be many situations where the player will be around only lit environments, in which case you must be able to improvise by creating shadows for yourself to move around. There are other abilities at your disposal like materializing kunais and throwing them at your enemies from a distance, and many other techniques that you can unlock by finding a designated number of scrolls which are hidden throughout these levels. Once you find these hidden scrolls, you will be able to purchase them via the pause menu. Now with all that being said, Aragami is a game that challenges the player to think through obstacles, and this game does exactly that by strategically limiting the resources that you have to work with. The intricate design that can be seen on Aragami's back serves as an indication of how much of your limited power you have at your disposal. Every time the character creates a shadow or vanishes, it depletes. How you can replenish it, and also how it can serve as a visual representation of Aragami being hidden from sight, is when it changes its whole entire color scheme like a chameleon. Another indication of how limited your resources is can be seen with these two little distinct designs. Yeah, remember when I said that you can throw kunais and do your other abilities? Well, you can only do some of these abilities when you have these little bad boys lit up on your back, and that usually revolves around probably like 1 or 2 mats of use, which means that if you have to utilize your abilities, you will have to do them wisely. From my playthrough, how you can refill these insignias is by picking up these scrolls that's found within these hidden small little temples peppered throughout each stage. But that's until you unlock this shadow kill, which automatically replenishes one with each kill. Plus, it looks awesome and reminds me of another Mortal Kombat character. Now, if there were any hints or words of advice I would like to give you, it would be to pay attention to the movement patterns of each enemy. Do this so you can time your course of action accordingly, and also be aware of your surroundings. Enemies only need to hit you one time and it's over. This goes for the brutes with the swords to the slim people who shoot projectiles at you. So again, stealth should be a primary approach. If you assassinate somebody, I will pay close attention to the other soldiers that may be nearby. Once they spot a fallen comrade, they will sound off an alarm alerting all the other guards. Afterwards, they will conduct an investigation on the surrounding area where it would be in your best interest to switch your settings into dark mode, so to speak. Now, if you find yourself lurking behind a corner in hopes that an enemy can come your way so you can assassinate them, you can always lure them out by making a sound, but please be careful. Now, some of the things that I had to get accustomed to which infuriated me, especially at the beginning of this game, was 1, the lack of freedom you have within your movements. I have 2 examples. 1, you can only swing your sword when you're close to an enemy for a kill, and there is no such thing as a freeform strike. Next is the painfully obvious lack of a jump button. There is no such thing as climb or hopping over anything. If you want to climb or get over something, you better shadow your way up there. Another thing that I had to come to terms with was knowing that this game was not built around the player making quick and decisive movements. Sometimes the way this game controls can make your movements seem a bit clunky. Let's just say that you're trying to get away from an enemy by teleporting to a safe location in a hurry. The player will have to stop and carefully aim with this dot in the middle of the screen in order to direct where the player wants to go. By the time the player does all this in the middle of being discovered, you might as well call it a wrap. Those blade beams are quick and powerful. I remember this one stage when I had to get through this obstacle, and out of all the levels in this game, this one made me the most frustrated. I failed this stage so many times because I had to look around and hope I teleported to the right spot. There are other features that I forgot to mention as well, like multiplayer, the option of raising or lower the difficulty of each stage you choose, and lastly the option of changing the cosmetic appearance of Aragami himself. The other outfits you can unlock by fulfilling certain requirements. But yeah, Aragami is pretty fun, but you just gotta get the hang of it though. And that thankfully is something that isn't difficult to do. The controls are responsive and easy to grasp. The only thing you have to work on as the player is your timing. Going into the DLC expansion entitled Nightfall, the gameplay for the most part remains the same, with the only exception being the option to choose between 2 characters that virtually play alike. This DLC takes place before the events of the main game and does a whole lot of things better than the base game. The visuals are better and more diverse in its presentation. And unlike the main game where it's always nighttime, the DLC has a range of various terrains, like the snowy tundra you start off in and the levels that seem as if it's occurring during midday or sunset. The sound design of Aragami captivates the feeling of its environments. Being out in the nature during nighttime, hearing the water, crickets, and other stuff is cool, but y'all know what we want to hear. And it never gets tiresome. Hearing your blade slice into the flesh and sometimes hearing the blood exit their body is kind of what makes this game enjoyable in the sound department, or at least in my personal opinion. But other than that, the voice acting is You see, characters don't speak English or any recognizable language that I know of for that matter, but instead they just make one short sound and for whatever reason it equates to a paragraph worth of dialogue via a text box. As far as utilizing techniques, teleporting doesn't make that much of a sound, but whenever I utilize this technique to create my own shadows, it sounds like flesh moving for some reason. But in regards to kills, I really do like the sound of whenever I pull off one of those shadow kills. The last sound that I won't ever forget is this horn followed by this jarring and abrasive stab of the drums. If I ever hear that, oh, I know it's trouble. The music for Aragami was done by Twin Feathers, which according to the official website consists of Elvira Bjorkman and Nicholas Hermberg. The duo contribute their skills to other video games as well, but when it comes to Aragami soundtrack, it features some of the most thoughtful arrangements when it comes to holding true to the cultural themes that this game possesses. One of my favorite songs coming from this game's OST is a song entitled Shaded Woods that has these string instruments constantly swelling and somewhat echoing. Then you have what appears to be this double bass that seems like a bow is just gliding over it slowly just to give this foreboding feeling, all the while the plucking of these strings in combination with other string instruments gives this song somewhat movement. When the percussion comes in, it just gives that satisfying boom. But this is just one of the songs that's on the slower side of things. There are songs where the pace picks up quite a bit, invoking a sense of rush. An example of this can be heard on the song entitled Bonus Trailer Theme. When you listen to it, it sounds like a heart is about to go into cardiac arrest. Then there are some other songs that seems to blend two genres together. This can be found within the song entitled Clash of the Light and Shadow. This song combines the strong presence of string instruments but then drowns it within rock elements. Now I'd be lying if I said that this song didn't make me think about Naruto when I first heard it. But anyway, I'll provide links as always where you can listen and purchase Aragami soundtrack for yourself. I will also provide links to where you can follow Twin Feathers via their official websites and also social media accounts. And from doing my research, I can see that they're also responsible for doing the soundtrack for the sequel of this game. But I'll talk about that when I dip into that game later on in the future. So with everything covered, I'm going to give this game a 7 to an 8 out of 10. This game is supposedly a love letter to Tenchu, another game centered around ninja assassins. And even though I love Aragami and this series of puzzles, the game concentrates more on the player being methodical and patient rather than just, well, going off like you're playing a modern day action-packed ninja gating game. This game's story is interesting but rather predictable. The cinematics are awesome and Aragami's sense of violence and elegance within the kills never gets old. How this game utilizes establishing limitations within the resources at the player's disposal makes the player think carefully about their approaches, but at the same time doesn't diminish the creative ways the player chooses to handle various situations and circumstances. But overall, I enjoyed this game and I can't wait to talk about the sequel. But that's for a later time. Aragami is now available for Steam, Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4 for $25. The DLC of course will cost you extra, so I strongly recommend you getting the Shadow Edition that costs like $30. This edition will save the buyer a few bucks, and on top of that, you get the main game and the DLC as well, making this the definitive edition to buy. But anyway, if you played this game, let me know what you think in the comments below. And until next time, be safe out there, and peace y'all.
And don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit up that notification bell, and I gotta go.